What are you doing here? I put out the video. Go watch it. What do you mean? You want a skit? You want me to make a joke or something? I would just go watch the video. You're saying that I set the expectation that videos should have skits now, so now I should just make one every single time? I think you're making a little bit too much sense there, friend. I think you should just go watch the video. Can we really not just watch it without something funny happening? Is that... All right, hold on. Video. There you go. There you go. See, it's the video guy on screen. Go watch the video. Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to sort of an impromptu video today because as you can tell, I just woke up, I showered, and I came out, and lo and behold, BHVR had released a bunch of the new kill rates and the survivor escape rates that we have not seen in a very, very long time. And Twitter is already up in arms about this, no shocker there. But there's some things here that are like very like non-surprising and non-crazy, but then there's some stuff that's kind of interesting and probably requires a little bit of analysis, so I'm gonna get into that. So yeah, pop a squat and enjoy a short and sweet video. Hopefully it's short, hopefully I don't ramble too long. Yeah. First off, looking here, we have the killer pick rates. They are divided into low MMR and high MMR, and realistically there's nothing like really surprising here at all whatsoever. Look at that. Huntress, Wesker, and Blight are still the most popular characters. Who would have thunk? This has historically been the case throughout all of DBD history, is that like Huntress really popular, and then Wesker was a huge release, very popular, and Blight is probably the best free-to-play killer outside of Nurse, which requires you to learn almost a completely separate mode of play. So yeah, these guys have historically been like the top 3 in the game, so they continue to be the top 3 in the game. We go over to the other side on high MMR. Once again, it's Blight. No duh. Wesker, no duh. Freddy sneaks in there because Freddy got a rework that made him way better. So I imagine he was seeing a lot more play there. So once again, this one's kind of like the killer pick rate reveal is kind of not really a reveal at all, because like this is the stuff you should expect to see on this. The deadliest killer in terms of like low MMR, high MMR, the killers that are killing the most. This one was kind of interesting because Freddy, I imagine, makes sense because, well, for a new rework, a lot of people playing them. But like Vecna being a low MMR demon is kind of interesting. I did not see that coming. I guess this makes sense because whenever I've watched like somebody who doesn't have a lot of hours in DBD play Survivor, they run into a Vecna and they're like, this guy's OP, he has no counterplay, and it's like, I imagine for a new player, like Skeleboys on different elevations, the blocking the pallet, just taking it from you thing. I imagine that can seem pretty oppressive for newer players, so I guess that makes sense. Twins especially I see here because like Twins is hard to deal with for people who are high MMR, just people who are in low MMR who don't know any better. So yeah, that doesn't shock me. What you're seeing a lot here as well are characters that like mess with terror radius and apply some sort of obliviousness or undetectable themselves, like Sadako, like Dredge, like Freddy, because if you're like brand new to the game, you're just trying to figure out what a terror radius even is. People that either take it away or start stealthing really kind of mess with you, so that's not really a surprise there. Also characters with alternative objectives like Sadako and like sort of Dredge, because you have to go like lock the lockers and stuff. Freddy having to pull the clocks off to protect yourself makes sense against low MMR. High MMR, Freddy is obviously going to be kind of a an outlier stat just because he got a rework, so he's relatively new, quote unquote new. Twins makes sense to me. Twins, especially even if you were playing with like a full 4-man, Twins could be pretty gnarly once you get around the bugginess. Very oppressive killer. Avoids most of the anti-tonal abilities because they mostly just go for slugs instead. Blight, no surprise there. Nurse, no surprise there. Spirit, no surprise there. Like literally Freddy being the outlier is the only thing worth noting because the rest of those 4 make complete sense to me. This is the one I really wanted to talk about because the stats here are extremely interesting. This cuts it not into low and high MMR, but this cuts it into overall MMR and then high MMR. And in the overall MMR, for some reason, solo queue players escape more than 4-mans do. And this is only by 1%, 42 to 41. But yeah, apparently solo queue players in the overall MMR are escaping more often than people who are 4-man together. Which I just find like extraordinarily interesting. Also, the fact that duos and trios are dying more than both of these guys together, which I think is really, really funny. And if we take a look at the high MMR, it makes a lot more sense where like you're seeing like the 48% escape rate among 4-mans, and then just the 40% escape rate at solo. A lot of people are like really confused about this, and I think it's just because like they're looking at like the top numbers, but that's overall. I think this actually makes a lot of sense when you really think about it, because this is escape rate. So they're talking about like just did you get out of the match? And I think overall, especially if you're looking at like, you know, solo queue or even just like duos or trios, like usually people end up playing for a hatch at a certain point. If you've ever played Survivor without a full 4 stack, you know that like there's usually one guy or two guys that are kind of playing in a very like questionable way. I was playing the Blood Moon event the other day on Survivor just to get my challenges done, and I got left on second hook twice just because people were so nose deep in the Blood Moon gens that they just like weren't paying attention to the fact that I was on hook. That was pretty cool. That was pretty neat. So stuff like that happens a lot. So I imagine there's a lot of people who end up playing for hatch in that scenario, or like especially if you're in a duo, they're like, I'll give up, you get hatch, and that sort of thing. Also, another tidbit about this I think is important is most people in solo queue bring really strong perk builds or items because they know they have to like mitigate the difference in the lack of teamwork. That's why you see so many like team like Survivor players out there when you're playing killer, like constantly running like 4 meta and a really strong item. It doesn't make it any less like intense to face, but like if you're going in there solo queue, you literally cannot rely on your teammates. So you have to bring a bigger bang for your buck in terms of perks, kind of make up the difference. I mean, even me right now, who absolutely like hates facing like Overcome MFT while I'm playing as the ghoul, I'm running Overcome MFT in my Survivor games because like I'm playing solo queue, and I do not want to just get landslided by an extremely strong character with nothing I can really do about it, because my teammates don't have the coordination to make up the difference there. So I think this solo number being higher overall makes sense, because I feel like solo players play more for their own self-survival, and they don't play as much for their for like super altruistic plays and that sort of thing. I think another aspect of this that does need to be talked about that I've seen a lot of people very rightfully point out across DBD social media is that overall in the 4-man category, I think overall you get people playing casually. Higher MMR people care more about winning, at least when it comes to the Survivor side. The killer role in DBD, by and large, no matter what MMR you're at, you typically just want to win, right? The name of the killer role is to kill the survivors. So you're going to be going out of your way to get as many of those sacrifices as possible, because that's just the whole point of the role. Whereas survivors, that escaping isn't the only objective a lot of the time for them. Sometimes it's going for funny flashlight saves, or getting value out of a goofy build, or trying to be a chest gremlin and find things. Like if you're not playing in the high MMR, a lot of people in the higher MMR don't necessarily play to win. A lot of people that aren't in high MMR try to do other things when they're just hanging out with their friends or just chilling. They may not even be on comms. I know when I play my Survivor day once a week on Friday, we don't do comms. I only do comms when I'm playing off stream with my friends. When I'm on Fridays playing on my stream at twitch.tv/the Mr. Headache, I don't do comms. And comms is a big part of what makes 4-man so strong, is that you essentially don't have to run any info, and you just know what's going on just because that information is just already being divulged to you. So if they're playing without comms, it's not nearly as strong as a 4-man on comms. But my point being, if you've somehow missed it and me rambling too much, which is totally fair, I ramble a lot, is that high MMR players are more likely to try on the Survivor role, whereas like the overall MMR, the general player base, is Survivor's made to play with the homies, right? That's like the point of the role, is like you go play with your friends, or you go solo to make a big risky play for survival. But otherwise, this is the role you play with your friends. Just like people will hop on Fortnite together, they'll hop on Siege together, they'll hop on even Phasmo together. Like this is the team game that you can play with your friends. So if you're just hanging out with the dudes, you're just hanging out with the homies. you may not be wanting to win every single game and just kind of like vaguely trying. I think that fits a lot of people. So I think that makes sense why that number is so low, and that solo queue players overall will probably not put themselves as risky positions for strangers, especially if those strangers have played kind of questionably throughout the match. So they will play more for their own survival. I think the thing that I kind of want to talk about with this is that whenever these stats come out, there's always like a big controversy, because ever since like DBD behavior has come out and said that their like main idea of what they want to have in terms of kill rate is 60% is kind of what they want the most. And that makes sense, because if you think about it, like because there's so many matches and you can't like split a survivor in half, the number is always going to be like really weird. But ideally, that most people being at like a 60-ish% kill rate does mean that like that's on average a little bit more than a 2K. So usually it's 2K on average, and a little bit more. Sometimes they'll get that third guy, sometimes they won't. And that makes sense, right? That's kind of like basically what we want balance to be. I don't think in a game like, and such an asymmetrical weird game like this, that you can get like perfect 50-50 numbers. Of course that's the dream, right? Like it's one of those things that like in theory that would be perfect. In practice, I don't know how realistic that is. So like that's not actually too bad to have on average a 2K, and maybe they're getting a third guy sometimes. I think that's not too crazy. What I do want to point out here, which will, you know, probably upset some people, especially the more killer-minded survivors, more killer-minded players that I know like my content, is some of these guys are about to breach 70. Like Freddy's up there both in low and high MMR at 69%. Nice. But they're getting kind of close to that like 75%. And if we're getting to that 75%, that is meaning that we're getting like 3Ks on average. And I have felt when I play Survivor, I feel like the game is gradually going into a direction where like I basically almost like never escape unless I am playing with a group. Even if I'm in like a partial group, just like a duo or something, I'm basically not escaping most of the time. And it did not used to be that way. I just think it's like a word of caution, something we need to take into account, something we need to look at, is that like, yeah, around 60-ish is a good place to have most of the killer rates for the killers, because that is on average 2-ish K, give or take. But if we get to a point where we start hitting that 75 and the killers are consistently getting 3Ks, that does mean that they are consistently winning the game. 3K or more is what almost the entire community considers a win. So that will mean that if we start pushing 75, that like the killers are just winning most of the time. And ideally in a game like this, where it takes two to tango, there's two sides, you kind of want that to be kind of a back and forth as much as it can. That I think especially when it's the 4v1 and there's the one roll, I think it's okay for it to be slightly better, like how we have it, where it's like 60, right? If it was true 50-50, I can see it kind of being like, oh well, I'm the power roll, so why don't I feel powerful? I get that. That's a tale as old as time, Beauty and the Beast, that people like to say. But if we start getting it to where they're just kind of like winning every game on average, that's kind of concerning, not only in the fact that it's like it's a 4v1 game, so there's the side v side, but like that 4 number is more than the 1 number. We need more survivors than we do killers because it takes more people to fill up a team. I'm sure you guys have been sitting there in the lobby sometimes and somebody will dip out and it takes forever for the lobby to backfill that other person. It takes more survivors to fill a team than it does a killer. Killer's just one player. So if we get to a point where kill rates get a little too high, that will dissuade a lot of people from playing and overall make queue times far worse. So it's just a word of caution. Just something I noticed. It's not oh my gosh, kill rates are getting too high and behavior's ruining everything. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody always goes to the extreme of that sort of thing. I'm just saying, word of caution, thing I noticed. Those are escalating. This is no longer just, well, they're basically 60. No, they're growing. And that's kind of worrisome. So hopefully that does not continue to uprise. Hopefully that does not continue to grow higher and higher, because if it does, that would be not ideal. Yeah, what do you guys think about the very incredibly interesting stat that they released today? There were some non-surprises, like the killer pick rates and that sort of thing, but there's some spicy things to talk about, like the kill rates getting higher, solo queue having overall a very actually high escape rate, and the discrepancy between high MMR and low MMR in the game. So please leave me your thoughts below. Your thoughts, your concerns, your angry comments, your whatever that they happen to be down below. I will read them. Hopefully I made your day a little bit better with this silly impromptu video today. And if I did not, well, I'll try to do so again in the next video. If I do not see you there, well, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.